Welcome, everyone. My name is Sean Spruce. I am the host of Native America Calling. And right off the bat, how many of you just absolutely loved that episode of Native America, right? Absolutely. And I have a question. How many of you watching that episode were thinking to themselves, geez, I've just got all kinds of cool ideas for movies that could be dubbed into Navajo, right? So I was thinking like Top Gun and Navajo. And for nothing else than just to hear Tom Cruise say, Bilagana. I'd pay for that. Or maybe Spider-Man in Navajo. There'd be some really cool cultural contexts. Or Fast and Furious in Navajo. But you know what? You need a different title. Fast X, Streets of Shiprock, right? Or maybe Barbie. Yeah, raise your hand. How many of us saw Barbie? Right? Okay. And maybe, just maybe, if that movie had been dubbed into Navajo, somebody might have had a little bit more forethought about incorporating indigenous references that could be easily misinterpreted, right? Just saying, just saying. All right, folks. Well, this is just wonderful. I am so glad that so many people came out to support this wonderful, wonderful screening that we have here today. And I do just want to make some announcements here. First off, let's just go ahead and thank the Chemo Theater for hosting us this evening. Wonderful accommodations. Had a little bit of deja vu there when I saw the Chemo on the screen, which seems like here we are again. Also, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, CPB, this series and this gathering here tonight, and of course our show, Native America Calling, would not be possible without them. Radio station KUNM, and you can get more information at their table in the lobby. Our Native America Calling, we are broadcast daily, Monday through Friday, on more than 80 stations throughout the nation, but we always consider KUNM at the University of New Mexico our home station. Our show started there in 1995, and our offices are now here in Albuquerque, just up the road on Lomas Boulevard, but we're always grateful for that shared history of their support and their continued efforts to promote our show, Native America Calling. They're true champions of NAC. Also, you can listen to Native-oriented radio on KUNM. They've got their own show, Singing Wire, on Sunday afternoons, 89.9 FM. Shout out for Singing Wire, right? Okay. New Mexico PBS, where you're able to watch the Native America series beginning October 24th. So that premiere is just right around the corner for this second season. We've got Koahnic Broadcast Corporation in the house. Earlier it was mentioned that I flew in, and yes, I did fly in, but I'm not the only person that flew in. We've got our wonderful, wonderful administrative staff here from Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, the parent company of Native America Calling, in the house. And if you could, folks, just go ahead and stand up briefly here. Koahnic Broadcast Corporation President and CEO Jacqueline Salee, right here in our fourth row. Operations Officer Charles Sather. Charles, please. Where are you, Charles? Stand, please. We also have Development Director Thea Lawton and Administrative Assistant Kayla Reardon. All of you folks who came in, made the trip from Albuquerque. You can find out more information about Koahnic Broadcast Corporation as well as Native America Calling. We do have a booth out at the front lobby there. And how many of you got a chance to get some of those Bisco Cheetos, those custom branded Bisco Cheetos? I hope we still have more of those out there. And also, if you go out there and you sign up for the Native America Calling newsletter, you'll be entered into a raffle to win a $50 gift card from the one and only world famous Laguna Burger. How about that, folks? And I'll tell you what, to the person who wins that gift card, I will personally escort you to Laguna Burger and help you spend that $50. How does that sound? Okay. All right, folks. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sit down now, and let's delve a little bit deeper into this PBS series, this wonderful PBS series, and this episode that we just watched. And we're going to have a discussion here. I'm going to chat with four of the people who were just absolutely implemental in making this happen. And first, directly here to my right is Mr. Gary Glassman. Gary Glassman. He's the founder of Providence Pictures and has produced more than 60 films for the world's leading broadcasters and media companies. He's the executive producer of the Native America series. Next to Gary, we have Daniel Golding, and he is the Native America series producer and director. His award-winning films have been screened both nationally on PBS and internationally and have been supported by CPB and Vision Maker Media. Daniel is a traditional singer and a language revitalization advocate. He is Quechan. Seated next to Daniel is Manny Wheeler, and you might recognize him from the episode we just watched. He's the director of the Navajo Nation Museum. He is a language advocate, and of course, he is Navajo, and I think he just might be a Star Wars fan too, right? And our fourth panelist is Jennifer Johns. She is a producer for the PBS Native America series. She's also a digital storyteller, a designer, and a mentor who was raised and rooted on the Navajo Nation in Northwest New Mexico. And she's deeply committed to centering cultural memory on the Native American experience. I want to go ahead, Gary, and begin with you because we were talking a while back and you shared with me that in your view, the process for which you folks produce this series is every bit as important as the final product that we all see on screen. And I want to ask you, because in this episode that dealt with language, it had a lot of working parts. There were some complexities to that. And just kind of walk us briefly through that process of how you choose these different native languages, these different native language advocates, and these communities to share these stories that are so inspiring.
Well, I think, first of all, the process being an important part of the filmmaking and the ultimate film that comes out is really important. And in this case, it was really important that we start with the communities that that you see in the film, and the sharing, them opening up and sharing their stories couldn't have been done, I don't think, as effectively as we have in this film, unless we had our talented Native producers and directors. And I think that's true for all 4 episodes. So, you know, that's the basis of, I think, the effectiveness of the film. And then in terms of, look, there are thousands of stories out there, and it's difficult to pick, you know, which ones to do. But sometimes, you know, the stars align in a certain way, and we think we got 3 really good stories here.
Now, was there a moment or maybe just an experience on the production that you found particularly effective or useful in really communicating the topic to the audience?
Maybe Dan can answer that one.
Sure, Dan, please.
Can you repeat that question?
While you were producing this episode, was there any just like a pivotal moment there or an experience that you felt just really was effective at communicating the overall theme and topic of Native language?
Well, I think the whole episode, I think, was kind of that way for me personally, because, you know, the one thing about these stories is there's shared experiences that all of us as Native people have gone through, even myself. My dad's a fluent speaker. He didn't speak to us. He didn't teach us how to speak Quechan, so I've had to learn how to pick it up as a second language. So those are the things, but probably there's a couple of instances. One was with the Passamaquoddy and the round table when they're listening to it, the recordings, and you just see that moment when the one lady, I forget her name, but she admits to her, you know, not her child asking her, why didn't you teach us the language? And I mean, that's what I did to my dad. I said, why didn't you teach me the language? So there's this commonality there, right? And that moment when we were filming it, it was very, very powerful to watch it sort of unfold. And I mean, it still gives me chills when I was there. And that really touched me. And I could see how much, you know, trauma or experience is still very much there in our communities when it comes to these things. And it's very real. And to see these people, I call them like the warriors, you know, the heroes who are out there doing this work in the trenches to try to bring back languages, such as Manny and his wife and other people, Sophie Shorty, who's here. You know, it's just means much more, you know. So that's one. And the other one was, I have a personal connection to Wax Cylinders as well, you know, so that was, my great-grandfather was recorded on Wax Cylinder. He was the last singer of the Quechan Deer songs. And so the only recordings we have of the Quechan Deer songs are on the Wax Cylinders. And so when we were listening to those, when we were there at the place listening to those Passamaquoddy ones, they brought those out so I could hear them too, of my great-grandfather, listening to, singing those songs. But also, my son was there. And he got to hear his great-great-grandfather for the first time sing those songs. And so when we talk about this series, you know, it's much deeper than people will really truly understand if you're not native, right? Because there's so many layers to it. And so when you talk about experiences, the whole episode, all 4 episodes are very, very personal in one way or another. But yeah.
That scene, those Wax Cylinders that date back well over 100 years. And Jennifer, you were also on location when that scene was filmed and they were played for the first time for the community. And just share a little bit about your feeling there and just the energy that must have been in that room when those people heard their relatives speak almost, you know, from more than 100 years in the past. What was that like?
Yeah, it's so interesting to, you know, to develop these stories. We research them and we talk with potential participants and sort of try to guess at what's going to happen. And then we put everybody in a room and turn the camera on and just sort of hope that we capture something interesting. And what we could see, we were out in the hallway on these listening on the radio and just listening to the intense emotion from the community, hearing the song and just an overwhelming gratitude to have access to a part of their history that they had lost. You know, I do this, my day job is in grant making, and I can say probably in the work that I do in that realm, I've never felt that impact. I'm not as, because we don't get to see sometimes the work that happens in the community. To witness it firsthand has been just phenomenal. And the community was processing in real time these voices from the past and thinking about how the voices came to be recorded, the history in between, all these things that were happening, but also just an intense gratitude to have access to the voices, to that knowledge. It was so strong. I think we kind of all stepped back immediately when it was done, and we were just, you could feel it was thick, and we were so amazingly thankful to the community for showing that vulnerability, because sometimes these conversations can be hard within our community. When we begin to dig in and talk about language and its loss and how to begin to revitalize it, it was amazingly, it's just such a privilege that the community allowed us to do that, and we're so thankful. And it's been interesting to watch them, because we've taken these films back to the communities that we filmed in. And Dan and Gary went back to Passamaquoddy and showed them this, you know, they got to see their own responses. And it's such an amazing thing to watch that and capture that for them so that they have it for themselves in the future. That's a key component of this, is whatever we capture, we want to give back to the community so that they can continue to have access to this for future generations. So it was so amazing.
And the trust component there, that they welcomed you into the community and shared that moment with you just speaks volumes to the credibility of your entire production team. Many of the voice actors and others who appeared in this episode, they're with us this evening, present. And just give us a little bit of background. How did you go about going out and recruiting all of these amazing Navajo-speaking voice actors who shared their talent on screen?
Well, I mean, we hold auditions. We held auditions. Star Wars was our first go at it, and like I said in the episode, I thought Star Wars was going to be it, and we worked with some great people in Hollywood. Lucasfilm put us in some great hands of some people there, and they just coached me through like how to do it. And they sent me a bunch of paperwork, and I'm like, all right, so we're going to do this. And so we put out the call for auditions. We had over 160 or 260, I forget, right off the top of my head, people come and audition for it. And I always give out this statistic. Out of those that came out, way more than half were females. So females all came to audition for the only female role, which was Princess Leia. But I mean, that kind of goes back to us as Navajo people being matriarchal, matrilineal, and it's just like maybe our females are the ones that are holding down our language right now. So that's just an interesting thing. But she wasn't the only female that got the role. C-3PO went to a female as well, and I think I saw her in the audience. I can't see you guys, there's lights that are in my eyes. So at some point, I think it would be great to turn on the house lights and acknowledge the voice actors, and then also the people that were in the episode.
Let's have all of the voice actors please stand, as well as anybody else who has appeared in this episode.
Who's all the voice actors and then people that were in the episode.
Right, big round of applause, big round of applause.
So here's Sophie Shorty and her family. They were in the episode. Andy Harvey is back there. He's the voice of Nemo's father, and also was a voice in Fistful of Dollars. Jerry's there. She's C-3PO in Star Wars. Here's also the Shorty family. They were also in the episode. So thank you guys for traveling out all this way. But we audition. We put a call out for people, and they come. And I mean, I think it's based on the popularity of the movie. So for Star Wars, we had a tremendous amount. For Finding Nemo, we had a tremendous amount, and for Fistful of Dollars, So I think for Star Wars, let's say it was 260. For Finding Nemo, that was probably about 150, and then for Fistful, about 100 people came out. So that's great in terms of we were developing a talent pool of language speakers that we can call upon. And then also, I think Knifewing is out there. He's where we recorded the, is Knifewing out there? And I know Joe, is Joe Key here? I didn't see, Joe said he was gonna be on his way. He's a translator. My wife is a translator, Dr. Jennifer Jackson Wheeler. She's really the impetus for all of this, because she is a very, very strong advocate. And while I'm up here, I do want to mention something. And I talked to Dan. This is the first time I saw the episode. They sent me the links to view the trailer, but I don't want to look. I'm the person that I don't like to hear my voice on recorded, and I don't want to see my face. And so I don't blame you guys if you don't either. I'm just kidding. But I really let something out in this episode, and I didn't realize I let it out until I said it. That I was part of the group of kids that we made fun of Navajo speakers. And that was just par for the course. And I was born in 1970, so I was in elementary school up until 1980, and into high school till 88, and that was par for the course. And so for me to admit that and feel that pain and that embarrassment of like, damn, I was part of the problem. But you know what? it goes back to all to us being colonized, you know? That's something we throw out there a lot. But now, you know, my wife and I were talking about that. And in Navajo, there's a phrase, and it says, Dojinida. And that means something. It just doesn't mean you don't say that. That's what I mean. There's this world in our languages that exists that is much deeper than English. Dojinida, it just doesn't mean you don't say that. It means you don't say that because it's going to come back on you. And so it came back on me. But now I'm trying to do something to fix it, you know? And I married a language, probably the best language, Navajo language person out there, in my humble opinion.
Life comes full circle.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So there's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, in media, native media, we talk a lot about the importance of representation and how we do that correctly, and specifically with accuracy and with authenticity. And what's your role in making sure that that authenticity is there so that when we see the finished product on screen, we're all happy and we all feel that this has been done respectfully and truthfully?
Yeah, I came into this world out of the worlds of libraries and museums. I've been doing work around diversifying these fields, you know, these fields in which Native voice was needed. And I've been working in that realm for a while. And Gary had heard a talk that I had done around some research I had done for Indigenous tribal libraries. And I think what I've been able to bring into this project is the understanding around working collaboratively, interculturally, to share power and space, to take the time, know when to slow down in order to build relationship so we can maintain trust. Because I don't think we would have achieved the level of vulnerability that we captured across all 4 hours had it been the typical extractive relationship that we often see in media, where folks come in, grab what they need from out of our communities and pull it out. This is a lot of the relationship museums are trying to come to terms with. And it was really wonderful to be in a medium and in a field that had a lot of agility to right wrongs. So as we were working through the production, film production is so interesting because it's continual problem solving. You're like researching and then you're trying to figure out, well, that didn't do what it was supposed to do. What's the next step? You're just continually moving, and even when we go to shooting, we land and maybe the film equipment didn't land, and we're trying to figure out, all right, what do we do now? It's this constant, thinking on your feet. And what I loved about that in terms of applying it to the world of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is, this phrase that we hear a lot in a lot of different fields, is I found that in museums and libraries, there wasn't a lot of space to allow people to recover from when they mess up, right? When we see an institution like a museum or a library fumble, there's a huge culture that will call them out, will cancel them, will go after them. But the reality is it's lots of humans running these spaces, and humans are infallible. And we're also capable of great learning and growing if we're provided the right sort of structure and support. And I find that my position was to be that as part of the production. All right, what are we going to do today? How do we talk this over? Why are we fighting for this story? Is this the right story? And just being supportive overall, because it truly was this intercultural project where we had to what we saw on camera, this building trust, what we were able to do, we had to do that behind the scenes. And I think that we all grew in that process. I was given access to this new realm of professionals that just blow me away, so committed to working with community, to uplifting Indigenous voice. It just felt completely right, and I was so thrilled that these talents that I didn't even know I was developing all along could be utilized in this way. And so I'm this sort of problem solver that comes along and sort of mentors and coaches folks along to say, remember, this is the goal that we want to do. This sometimes for these communities, because what I love about all these 4 hours is we tried to not go with the typical Native person. You know, we know this in Indian country, that it's the same Native people that are always interviewed. It's the same people that are always gone to, that we kind of share out. But what I loved about this is we were digging in and showing really what Indian country was, and we're challenging Indian country to expand their own understanding of what that is. Because we saw Passamaquoddy, that's Indian country. We saw Eastern Cherokee, that's Indian country. That's the wonderful part about this series, is really helping our audience grow their own understanding. And I think that's probably what I push a lot, is to try for us to continue to learn. How can we do that in a supportive way, behind the camera and on the camera? And I think that based on what we're seeing from the audiences, we're getting such a good response of folks excited, and a lot of Indian country inspired by each other. I think that's really exciting. And we've always, when we show this film particularly, we're hearing other Indian communities saying, why Manny needs to come to us. He needs to do this for us. We want to do this out here. That's exciting to me, because that just shows that we have so much talent and creativity, and so much energy for this sort of work. So it's really exciting.
One moment I just found extremely poignant was that statistic that was shared, that within just a little over 40 years, Navajo fluency has dropped, 40%, from over 90% to 50%. And there were several moments there in the episode. Tom Belt, Eastern Cherokee, who I know quite well, shared that even though he's fluent, he hasn't shared that. He hasn't taught his children to be fluent. Manny, you mentioned it as well in your family. And Daniel, I want to ask you, what's driving that? Why is it that we're not fostering more language revitalization and retention in our communities? And what do you really hope that Native language advocates and others will glean from this episode to promote Native languages in communities?
Well, that's a heavy question, man. But yeah, it's, I think for me, my hope is that non-Native people see this too, to see how important language is to our communities. And that, when you think about, like, the Navajo Nation is probably one of the, if not the largest fluent speaking Native community in the United States. And you look at my tribe, Quetzan, which only has like 4,000 tribal members, and then now we're down to less than 100 fluent speakers in our community. You just go, man, it's scary to think, like, what will be lost if that language is gone, And there definitely needs, and that's the reason why I resonated with this particular episode to direct and produce, because for me, I'm a big advocate, and I think people need to see this. I think funders need to see this. I think, people in Congress need to see this, because they're the ones that, provide the funds that help support all the hard work that these language warriors are doing out there in these communities to try to save our language. But I think it's also about teaching non-Native people too, what is lost when a language is lost. It's just not a language, right? It's a whole encyclopedia of knowledge that is gone. And that is so important, that people have to understand that outside of, we know that, right? But other people need to see that. And doing the innovation like what Manny's doing by dubbing movies, things that our kids and people are already, consuming this media, more of that needs to happen too. I think Manny's going to get a lot of work out there in Indian country because, when we went to Passamaquoddy, they were like, well, we need to talk to Manny so he can show us how to dub Star Wars into Passamaquoddy, and this and that. So, which is cool. That's what you want to see, right? You want to see that. So there's this sort of intertribal connection happening too, right? Where we're, people in the Native community are watching these episodes and it's like, wow, that's cool. We need to do that too. How do we get a hold of this? How did we do this? So there's that whole aspect. So there's so much more that can be done. And, producing these series, the thanks to Gary, who took on, putting up with all of us Native producers and, putting out these really great episodes. And hopefully more will come too in the future. A season 3 maybe?
We're hoping. We are definitely hoping. Folks, we're going to open it up for Q&A here in a few moments. So go ahead and get your questions ready, and we'll have a microphone circulating there in the audience. And Gary, I want to go back to you because, again, you are the executive producer, and you've convened all this talent, all these producers. What's been the most exciting and inspiring moment so far in this whole journey for you?
Well, working with, our team has been the most exciting, and, being able to go to communities with Dan and Jen, and Mandolin is out here too, who produced our segment on the Pueblo Revolt, and as many of you in this area know, the Pueblos are incredibly private, and being able to, because of Mandolin, being able to have access to the community and have them share their story with a huge audience is amazing. So I feel like, on one hand, what's been incredible for me personally has been working with everybody personally, but also the privilege of being able to take these incredibly personal, meaningful stories and bring them to a massive audience. And I just, I like all the films I've worked on, but usually it's the one I'm working on right now that I like the most. But I do feel like this series is revolutionary in many ways, and both in terms of form, but certainly in terms of content and its potential to reach people. And our first commitment was to the communities that we worked with, but part of my responsibility as executive producer is to produce something for PBS that will be successful on PBS. And to be successful on PBS, you have to reach a huge audience. And, Native people are 2% of the U.S. population. So, we really want to touch that 2%, but we'd like to get 98% of the other people watching as well.
Right. So season 2 premieres October 24th, and there are 4 episodes in this series. And so it just begs the question, realistically, how optimistic are you, Gary, that the series will be renewed for a 3rd season?
Well, I don't know. I started pitching the first season in 1999, and it got commissioned in 2015. I don't know how much longer I have to go, in terms of whether I can last another 15 years. But the first season premiered in 2018, and it took, another 4 years to get the commission for the next one. I'm hoping, with the support of, Native America Calling and Kahanic radio, and we've got more and more support. CPB came in on this one as well. There's a lot of excitement about this series, and you know, the more people are excited about it, I think the better chance we have of getting a season 3. Then we have a QR code that we're gonna put out there, so please everybody just really, oh, great.
Or one of them.
Say nice things about this, and we can report back, and it'll help us get season 3.
Well, hopefully we won't have to wait longer than we'll have to wait for the next Star Wars episode. How about that, huh? And with that, Manny, remind us, so Star Wars has been dubbed, Fistful of Dollars has been dubbed. It looks like Dory's coming soon. What else is in the works, and what all is available right now that folks can watch in Navajo movies?
So Finding Nemo is done. So it went Star Wars, Finding Nemo, and then Fistful. So those are all done. I think the DVDs might be for sale by Knife Wing out in the lobby. He got stuck in traffic. So, you know, so the pandemic really mixed things up for the whole world. And for me, the studios that I was working with, I had 3 awesome movies lined up, and those got really put on hold. So I can't say what they are, but you know, I'm working on them. And I'm also going to start knocking on other studios' doors, so to speak, to get permission to do other movies. So there's a lot of plates in the air, so to speak, when I start working on these projects, and they depend on different things. But there will be more done. We did Baby Shark in Navajo. It's on YouTube, so Google that. That got like more than 2,000 or 2 million views. So, you know, so that's doing great. But you know, we want to do a lot. We want to do as many as we can. My personal goal is to do 100 movies in Navajo. You know, so that's my personal goal. And I just want to say something. You know, I think about how the world works, how our holy people work, how our spirits work, and you know, we're in this theater, and if you look at all around it, and there's all these symbols from Navajo and from our Pueblo people, our Pueblo brothers and sisters. They're all here, and that's them. They're listening and they're watching and they're guiding me to help them, help us understand them, help us understand each other about who we are and why we're here. So those are some of my, you know, my personal feelings on when I work on all of these things. And I have a great sense of humor, I think, but I really take it seriously, our language, and I learned a lot. Star Wars, this is the 10th year anniversary that Star Wars was released. And I learned a lot of things about how I should take care of all of it. In the beginning, it was just, let's do it, it's cool. But then I got some discussions from elders, from children, from traditional people, from people that aren't traditional, and I listened to all of them. And so that's what I mean. I'm learning that I got to take care of this. So I do, like I said, I have fun, and I want people to have fun, but I also have a sincere belief, a spirit, that there's a spiritual thing going on, and I'm just trying to go with it. So.
All right. Folks, questions, comments from the audience? I see a hand right here. Yes, sir. Yeah.
A friend of mine was having a conversation in his tribal community. James Rowan Gray, he's the youngest principal chief of the Osage Nation. DiCaprio, Scorsese, and De Niro came to visit the Osage tribe. They wanted to make sure they only had 2 questions of the Osage. What was the period dress for a woman in the 1920s, and what did her kitchen look like? They put $200 million investment in this film that's going to come out on October 20th. Killers of the Flower Moon. And by the time they got done with that meeting, James Rowan Gray asked Scorsese, because his grandfather was the one Osage whose head was blown off when his hands were tied behind his back, and they ruled it a suicide. He said, Scorsese, I've seen your films before, and as you blow my grandfather's head off on the big screen, I want to introduce you to my son, who his name is James Rowan Gray, carrying the name of his great-grandfather. At that moment, Scorsese said, hold on. He pulled his film crew off to the corner, and they had a quick meeting. And they said, we're going to delay shooting for 2 months. DiCaprio changed his role in the movie at that particular time. So it was very powerful that an Indian tribe, an Indian community can start telling our own stories in our own languages from our own perspectives. And what we're going to see on October 20th is as close as it gets for the Osage to tell their story of how they started the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Leonardo DiCaprio is going to make that. So I think it takes that kind of courage for a James Rowan Gray to stand up and talk to a De Niro, a DiCaprio, and a Scorsese, and to be able to say, you know, in a provocative way. I just left this afternoon, I spent the afternoon with Jacob Johns, a Hopi who's sitting in the hospital, University of New Mexico, trying to breathe. He got shot as a climate prayer in Espanola, New Mexico, about 2 weeks ago. He's still trying to breathe. The bullet that went into his chest didn't go out because it was a hollow point bullet that took away his spleen, his kidney, his liver. He's sitting in the University of New Mexico right now. Mm-hmm. And when this happens, you know, while they're in prayer, you know, we have some filming to do here in New Mexico.
Okay.
So I really encourage us as filmmakers to tell honest truths and to be courageous in our storytelling about the kind of things we have here in New Mexico with our relationships with the Latino community and the Dene community and the Pueblo community as we try and figure out Chaco Canyon and the issues around Chaco Canyon, whether it's Alati, money.
Really appreciate these comments, sir. We've got other folks in the audience. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Come on up to the mic. And what really resonates, sir, with what you're describing is that it's not just the job of producers and executives. We all have a role, and we can all make a difference with regard to how we are represented in television and film. And maybe, Jennifer, if you could just expand on that just a little bit, that what we as just regular individual Native people can do to make sure that that representation occurs.
I'd like to let the gentleman, if you would finish up your thoughts.
Thank you.
Then, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I was just going to challenge the film industry to be as equally as courageous as Scorsese and telling the truth and on these stories that's happening here in New Mexico. Thank you for that.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Other questions? Other comments in the audience?
I'll come to you.
You see somebody there? Okay. 5th row, 6th row coming back.
Hi, thanks. I sell underwriting at Native America Calling. In full disclosure, I am available afterwards for discussions about discounting. My real question is, I do love language. I love it so much. I speak a few, mostly European languages, and I had the opportunity to read Braiding Sweetgrass, I think, in which the author describes going back to her own language and the discovery that in her language, the reason she wasn't running across nouns was that everything was sort of expressed in its verb state of being, right? So she would make the point that there isn't a river I don't know how you say it, but there's a state of riverhood or a state of rivering. And so it just strikes me that there's not only knowledge, but entire perspectives on how to look at the world. And I guess my question would be how you would bring that forward in an episode. Thank you.
Who'd like to respond to that one? Daniel? I'll volunteer you.
The idea of talking about sort of, you know, native worldview, native thought, native, intellectual, or I think that's a huge and very deep conversation that has to happen, and because there's so much I think the world can learn from that, especially in the situations we are in today with climate change and all these things that are happening, and so those have been in discussion. Not necessarily for the series, but outside the series, but and in the series too, because when you start talking about AI and where we as Native people and that role plays with us, is a very important discussion that needs to happen as well. So it's good that those people are out there that are doing that, and we are kind of exploring those things as well. So. Who knows what's going to happen? You know, season three, scan that code, you know.
Other questions in the audience? Other questions? Oh, Art right in front here,
First, just thank you for your work, because I think it was excellent. I really appreciated it. And I hope a lot of people see it. Two questions. The wax cylinders, is there an effort underway to get the rest of those recordings into computer form, as was done with the ones that appeared in your film? And I forgot my other question was, I'm really happy to see and be among so many people who were involved in this project here in this room. But I just heard about this through my mom, and I don't know how she heard about it. But like, I'm really sad not to see another 300 people like me sitting here who just heard about it somewhere. And so the second question is, how are we going to make that happen?
wax cylinders.
Wax cylinders, yeah. So I can't remember how many. I think there was like 27 or 30 wax cylinder recordings at the Passamaquoddy that were recorded by Fuchs. They've translated, or they've converted all those using this new technology, except for maybe 2 which are actually broken. They're in pieces. And so they're trying to figure out a way to use there's another new technology coming out, laser technology, to use to try to piece those together, to restore those cylinders that are broken into pieces. So they're working on that. With my tribe, we had probably, I think there's like 60 wax cylinders recordings, not just of the deer songs, Quack, but many other different songs. They were recorded back in the 1920s. Those were originally transferred in the 1970s to cassette, but those recordings, I don't know if you ever heard any of these old recordings, but they're really bad, right? The speed is off, there's a lot of grooving, there's all these things. So when I went to Smithsonian, or the National Audiovisual Conservation Center, they translated a couple of them in using this new technology. They have, I think, a few thousand wax cylinder recordings on native languages there throughout the United States. And tribes can reach out to them to see if they can get access to them. They're willing to work with people. They want to give back these recordings in a better state, right, with this new technology. So it's a matter of reaching out to these communities, or reaching out to them, however, building this relationship to get those recordings back to these communities. So that's a great question. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's what needs to happen. They're there, they're accessible. just got to reach out to them to try to find out what's on those recordings. And they have lists. They have lists of all the recordings they have there and stuff. So, yeah. What was the second part was, what are we going to do to, I'll let somebody else answer that,
I wish I knew how to, turn this into the biggest hit ever on PBS. I don't know how to do that. Often it's about promotional money and buying advertising, and we put all of our funding into production. There are some series out there on PBS that have more funds for their promotion than we had for our entire production. It's just the way it is. So we've been trying to basically build a grassroots campaign, going back to the communities and hoping that word of mouth happens. And these days, word of mouth is amplified by social media. So, I think over the next few weeks, you'll see more and more. We just tonight, PBS, we've produced an incredible amount of extra content that PBS is putting out there in social media and on the website. Check out Native America PBS website. You'll see Dan and his son on that. We didn't put it in the film, but that scene with Dan listening to his great-grandfather is on that. And also for the first episode, we worked with the group Hallucination, who are actually performing just 2 blocks from here tonight. That is out on the website right now, and they've got a huge following. So we're hoping that all of the people who, Manny, putting stuff out through the Navajo Museum, we're just hoping that there's a real people movement to help promote the series.
Thanks, Gary and Dan. Art, I see a hand there about 10 rows back on the left, right on the aisle.
Hello. When I heard Manny was coming here, I decided to come here. Hey, Manny. Well, I'd like to introduce myself, maybe a comment here. My name is Norman Patrick Brown, and originally from Chinle. And for my Navajo relatives, I'm Tsanabitli. Aro, Pimpitone, Bashishchin. My Nali is Anagati, my Chase Hapa. And I'm originally from Chinle. I'm a filmmaker. I say that very proudly, a writer, director, also an actor. My dad was a Navajo code talker. And most of my life, I've proudly really tried to initiate the Navajo language in various processes and artistic, creative processes. Navajo Language Drama Festival, example. But what I wanted to say is that now that this explosion of indigenous films with Prey and all these films coming about, I've had about 3 or 4 different inquiries into Native films, specifically Navajo. A lot of they're non-Navajos. They want to create Navajo content. It's within their narrative that they want to create these stories. And one such project is Dark Wind. And among my people, my family, different medicine people I've talked to, I've asked them about it. And they've said, we don't watch it. So in all actuality, that's a narrative that isn't ours. Some might say it's stolen intellectual property rights. And the idea initiated itself from I say this in a humble way, from a Southern Cheyenne director, a lead actor who's Lakota or Dakota. They met with some wealthy non-Navajos, and they worked with the Pueblos. And they created the series that really isn't our narrative. It's based on intellectual stolen property rights, but I'm almost at the end. And my father always said, take care of your language, protect your language. That's you. That's the land. That's all we have left. They've taken the land, they've taken our ceremony. This son, this is all we have. So we must always do that. So from that perspective, my comment is that we must be careful whose narrative it is. But when I saw over the years what Manny was doing, I saw that there was a direct, humble collaboration. I'm almost done. Martin Scorsese, when he created this, all the research I've done is he went to the tribe there and met with the people. And they turned his story back. And he went back again and he worked. Pray. I talked to Jane Myers. I've known her for years. She told me that process, that heartbreaking, to really come together as a producer to put this together, pray. But when you look at Dark Wind, that didn't happen. And that's a major concern that I and many others have. I'm almost done. That we must be careful whose narrative and who utilizes our language without our participation above the line, without our participation in terms of its story content and its creativity, even in its delivery. So when I see the actors on there, I don't see a Navajo. I see another Plains tribe. It's a multi-million-dollar effort, and Navajo's zero. So that's my narrative that I'd like to speak about. So Manny doing what he's doing is really great because he owns, the people put it together with the collaborative effort. That's what I'm trying to say. That's needed. So I just want to say one last thing is that we have to be careful whose narrative that we share, that we examine, and that we speak of. Because that's all we have is our language. So anyway, thank you, Manny, for all you've done. All of you.
Yeah, great comment, and it's a comment that I've heard before. I think we've all heard that, right? So, Manny, go ahead and respond because as much progress has been made, and I know there's a lot of Native talent involved with Dark Winds, but yeah, I mean, there's still a long ways to go, huh?
You can put me on the spot for Dark Winds.
Spoiler alerts from Dory.
Oh, it's not a spoiler. So, Dark Winds for me, it got some things right, but it got a lot of things wrong as well. And I think we want to be in solidarity as Native people to, okay, let's go ahead and support this, and because we want more representation out there. And so I think, for me, let me just put it this way, and it was in a newspaper, and I'm not quoting it word for word, but I know it was in a newspaper that it said, the fish in Navajo Finding Nemo spoke better Navajo than Dark Winds. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. And with that, folks, we are just about out of time. We've had about 2 hours here. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting this screening. And I always feel that TV, documentaries, movies, they're always best when they take us through the full spectrum of human emotion, when they make us laugh, when they make us cry. And in that regard, this Native America series, you folks have completely met that bar and exceeded it beyond again. Big round of applause again for everybody that's involved with this fantastic project. And with that, I do want to direct everybody's attention to this QR code. This is a survey that we're providing here with Native America Calling. We would really like to get your feedback, not only on this event tonight, but also on our show, what types of topics you would like us to cover, what types of issues resonate most effectively with you. And also, PBS has a QR code survey as well, and you can access that QR code out there at their booth in the lobby. And with that, I want to go ahead and wrap up our evening. Thank you again for joining us. It's been a wonderful evening. PBS Native America series, it does premiere on August 24th. So, excuse me, October 24th. So, again, safe travels home, everybody. Warm regards.